Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Visual Studio Toolbox Live. I'm your host, Leslie Richardson, and today I am very excited because it is now time for another episode of What's New in Visual Studio 2022. This time we are covering previews 3 and 4, and there are tons of new features that have been added in the past 2 previews, and it's really exciting, and I am joined by several members of the Visual Studio team to do some show and tell. So because we're all here and ready to help answer any questions that you have, feel free to post any of your questions about VS 2022 in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. And so to kick things off, if you haven't installed it already, the previews are free to download. So be sure to go to visualstudio.microsoft.com and check it out and play around, share your feedback. And if you have installed it already, you might have already noticed that some of your UX experience might be a little bit different than you're used to. So to talk about that a little bit, I am joined by Atlas. Hey, Atlas. Oh.
I'm muted.
No, you're not.
How's it going?
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm doing awesome. I'm excited to talk about some of these new visual changes that you'll see when you just first install Visual Studio. Maybe folks who are joining us today live will be experiencing this for the first time, which is exciting and fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about it too. I feel like I noticed subconsciously a difference when I first started using VS 2022, but I couldn't articulate what exactly changed. So maybe if you want to tell us what has changed. And
yeah, I would love to articulate some of that. We hope that some of these visual changes are going to have exactly that type of impact, where you may notice some different look and feel. You'll notice a new logo. You'll notice a new welcome screen when you first install, something that makes it a little bit easier to find in also in your taskbar as you're navigating through your applications and through Visual Studio 2019 and the difference between Visual Studio 2019 and Visual Studio 2022. So when you're first installing 2, especially if you're a dark theme user, you'll also notice an update to the dark theme. So you can see it here in our new dark theme. And mostly what we're trying to do here is work with, we spend a lot of time working with customers in our testing and through feedback that folks have been providing to reduce eye strain and to increase accessibility and recognizability of our icons, of the different type of selection when you're inside a menu. So here inside of these different menus, you can see that we have a highlighting feature that's a little bit more pronounced than in our previous dark theme. So you can quickly see what you have selected as you're navigating through different options here. And we do have the selection color here that has been changed to that purple highlight, as you can see. So overall, the feedback that we've been getting throughout our preview cycles and in our user testing has been that the eye strain has been reduced, and that overall the palette has become a little bit more of what we like to see, that we can look at our screen for as long as we need to while we're coding and developing without getting distracted by very bright colors or having to really context switch between that and other Windows dark theme. So we actually align to the Windows Fluent color palette as well. You may notice also just front and center, we have the a new option here for our editor text too. So Dante is going to also jump on and jump into more of our editor features that have come out in Visual Studio 2022 and in our preview 3 and 4. So we can jump into those too when Dante hops on. But I did want to call attention to it, as well as some updates to our icons that we've tested also for further accessibility. To have better recognizability, but also to not disrupt, that you can tell exactly what this icon means from what you've used before, and continue on your way. And so, as you were talking about, Leslie, that the kind of just continuing forward with your normal experience, but may noticing some slight improvements or changes as you go through your regular theming options as well. So that's just a quick highlight of some of those newer features, and we could probably get into a little bit more detail, but I'll pause there and see if you have any questions that popped up.
Yeah, that's really cool to see. I think for me, I definitely noticed the font change first, which we'll talk about once we introduce Dante later. But I think I also noticed like borders around windows and stuff. It kind of adopted a little bit of that high contrast mode, which I kind of liked, and it made things a bit more readable.
Yeah, that's definitely the intent here, is to have a better readability and to increase that contrast, so that you can see when things are important to you, you can see them quickly and be able to differentiate that between things that maybe just aren't as prominent or are going to be as impactful. So when we have even just like the colors in our icons, to make sure that they're well legible and that they're even just an exciting color palette. And so, yeah, we're interested to see from folks and trying out previews 3 and 4. If you had tried out preview 3, we also made a lot of improvements to the theming options that based off of customer feedback. So just thank you to our preview users for all the feedback that you give us. It's just invaluable. So we have all of those updates out in preview 4, so you can try those out and see what you like and what you think can maybe be improved on, and what we're still working to grow as a team working on these visual updates.
Great. And I got to ask, what was the biggest challenge about doing this UX refresh? Because, people are passionate about the UX experience when it comes to Visual Studio. So what were some of the hurdles that you had to hop over?
Absolutely. I mean, I really understand the passion behind, this is my environment. I've set it up in the way that I like it. I'm used to it this way. I feel the same way. And so when we approached the visual updates changes, we did a pretty slow incremental growth over time, and tested a lot in the A/B testing with folks who were trying it every day. It's interesting to see the feedback come back in through the surveys too of folks who have been trying it for an hour, or maybe like, I'm not so sure, or some folks liked it, but some folks were like, wow, what was this purple? And then folks who tried it for like 6 to 7 hours, 8 hours, 3 days, are like, okay, this is great. So I'm interested to see if that's true for folks joining us today, or when they go and try it out. But that has generally been the tone of the feedback is like, whoa, there's a change. Okay, it's not that bad. Everything's fine. Everything's still where I need it. I'm not trying to take anything away. But it is that balance, because it's super important to have that consistency. We don't want to disrupt anybody's workflow. So making some small steps toward modernizing, toward better accessibility and contrast, and better recognizability of things that are important, but still taking that as a slow progression so that we don't disrupt y'all,
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I know personally, I was creating a demo for something else between both VS 2019 and 2022, both in dark mode. And the difference is noticeable when put side by side, but in a good way, in my opinion, when looking at VS 2022. I just think it's a lot more readable. So yeah, I think you did a good job.
Thank you. Thanks, Leslie. I appreciate it.
So, yeah, +1 for me. So, yeah, thank you so much, Atlas. This is really exciting. And yeah, share your feedback, y'all, on the UX experience and how we can make it even better.
Yeah, we're always looking for feedback. So anytime you have something to say, just give us a little hello in our either report a problem or suggest a feature, and then we'll be getting back to you. It's really important to us. So thanks again for trying out our previews.
All right, thanks. So as Atlas mentioned, the font has changed. So we're going to swap over to Dante to talk to us about the elephant in the room, which is the fact that the font has changed recently. Hey, Dante. Oh, there you go. I think you're muted.
Now I'm unmuted. There we go. Sorry. And thanks, Leslie. Glad to be back. Yeah, we did change the font with Visual Studio. We've moved to the Cascadia mono font in Visual Studio. The big reason why we made the change, well, a handful of reasons, but one of the big ones is we had some evidence that the portions of the character that our eyes use to disambiguate one character from another is a little bit heavier in Cascadia than it is in Consulus or Courier or any of the other fonts. That can be a real game changer for folks who have dyslexia, character dysmorphia, any kind of reading disabilities or anything like that. It can make it easier for them to be able to disambiguate one character from another, which makes it easier to read. And well, if you can't read, or reading your code is actually going to be a huge performance boost for folks. One of the other things that the Cascadia was originally developed by the Windows Terminal folks, and they wanted to create a font that was specifically designed for coding and code type experiences. And one of the other things that Cascadia brings is the idea of ligature. So if you look here on my screen on line 27, there are a couple character strings that usually have a specific meaning in various programming languages. And the idea of a ligature is to replace a series of characters with a single glyph. So I'm going to hit Control Q and search for font in the Visual Studio search. And I'm going to switch from Cascadia Mono, which is the default, to Cascadia Code. And when I do that, if you watch line 27, now those character sequences have been replaced with a single glyph that represents what the character means. So exclamation point equal in C# means not equal to. Here, that's replaced with the actual mathematical symbol that means not equal to.
That's really
For
cool.
folks, particularly on the autistic spectrum, this can reduce the cognitive overload of having to recognize a series of characters and mentally have to take the jump to say, what does that mean? The glyphs can actually make a huge difference for them. Also, I like it myself. I don't show up on the autistic spectrum, but I think the glyphs help me understand the code more quickly, which is why I use Cascadia Code myself. It's a stylistic choice, and like what Atlas and I know Grace will be talking about a little bit is trying to make Visual Studio look the way you want it to look. You decide, do you want the glyphs or not? I had to change the glyphs for this demo because for me, I like the glyphs, but I want to be able to show the default, which is without the glyphs versus with.
That's really cool. I enjoy getting to see that visual representation of what you're actually looking at sometimes. Like I do a lot of pen and paper when I'm sketching ideas or like writing out code sometimes. And I get in a habit of doing the not equal sign like that. So
yeah. I actually don't have my notepad sitting around me right now, but I usually have 2 or 3 of them sitting around, so it helps for me too. So another thing that I want to show off, as I mentioned, Cascadia was one of those that we did specifically for, originally it came with the readability, the glyphs and things like that, but the accessibility value of it came in. One of the other things that we added in this version, I'm going to hit Control Q and look for line spacing. The Office Immersive Reader has been a game changer for folks with reading disabilities. One of the things they did is increase the amount of space between lines. It makes it easier to recognize the lines, and it helps for folks also on the autistic spectrum with character crowding or the overwhelming of too much text on the screen at a time. So there's a line spacing field here now, and I can change this to 2. I'm going to hit OK. There's a glitch. This is actually a Preview 5 build, but Preview 4 should work correctly. When you open up, as soon as you apply it, everything will get spaced out a little bit more, and it reduces character crowding. It makes it a little bit easier from a cognitive perspective to see everything that's going on. Some people like this. Some people absolutely hate it. In fact, with the first preview of it that we released, we had somebody immediately go, can I make the line spacing 0.9 or 0.85? They actually wanted to crowd it more. We're looking into whether we can do that. And, you know, we might be able to, but it's all about what helps any given developer be more or less productive. That's why we added this feature in. And we're working on ways to make it more discoverable because we really want people who would benefit from this to be able to find it. But the accessibility value here, we're already getting folks telling us that this is a great feature that we got.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's nice that the option is there, different strokes for different folks. I know personally, I think I prefer my code back at the 1 point spacing, but yeah, understandably people like the double spacing, or I guess less than 1.0.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, we don't have the less than 1.0. It's actually whether or not WPF will let us do that. There's restrictions in the underlying platform, but we're looking into it. We might be able to do it. So there are a couple other features that we added. One of them has been a real big request from a lot of folks, which is subword navigation. Some folks might know this as camel hump navigation or medial capitals. But if I hold down the Control key and I tap left and right arrow, you'll notice that my cursor jumps by entire words at a time. So components, ASP.NET Core, Microsoft, and so on. Punctuation is considered its own word. If I also hold down Alt when I move over, now it will jump by subword. So a subword is defined as having a capital in the middle of the word. So here, ASP, .NET, Core, Components, Web, Assembly, and so on. It's honestly, just like you said with the line spacing isn't the feature you use. I don't like subword navigation, but there are a lot of people who do. It's been a very highly requested feature from developer community. And actually, this recent summer, we had an intern. Eptisum did an amazing job implementing this one. We had to do a couple tweaks to respond to some customer feedback with it, but we were able to bring this out. And now, if you hold Control-Shift, you can select by word. Well, if I Control Alt-Shift, I can select by subword. And we're expanding on this in Preview 5. Right now in Preview 4, if I double-click a word, it will always select the entire word. There will be an option that allows you to say, I want double-click to select by subword. So
I was going to ask about that because that's what I'd want to do personally.
Exactly. Those are changes that we're going to be doing. We're exploring that. We're providing more options in Preview 5. Another one is there is a delete word keyboard shortcut. We're going to allow there to be a delete subword keyboard shortcut. The amusing one with that one is, I believe it's Control Delete is delete word. To add the Alt modifier would make it Control Alt Delete, which we really shouldn't be using as a keyboard shortcut in Visual Studio for a lot of reasons. I want to delete a word and I'm now logging out of VS. That probably is not what that's what I want there. Yeah, you know, different strokes, but there's a couple other features I want to show off real quick. One of them is actually a feature that's been around for a while, but we tweaked the behavior of it, and I want to show off what that does. Box selection, it's actually been around since at least VS 2017, and it allows you to kind of make a rectangular selection. So I'm holding down Shift-Alt, and when I hit my arrow keys, you can see the selection area that I'm doing is a rectangular region, as opposed to selecting the entire lines. And then I can backspace, I can type, and whatever I'm doing here is being applied to each one of those individual selected regions. Now, like I said, box selection has been around for a while, but the change that we made is this now uses the multi-caret experience. In the old versions, if I were to hit end right now, it would abort the box selection, put the cursor back at the single point, and jump to the end of the line. In this case, when I hit end, it applied that end keystroke to each one of the individual cursors. So now I can move each one of the cursors in the multi-caret experience. We constantly got people saying, how come end won't extend a box selection? It's because there's a difference between box selection and multi-caret. And that's one of the changes that we made here. So again, it's if you're using Shift-Alt, you can define a rectangular region and you can make whatever changes you want to that and just hit escape to cancel it. The multi-caret, for folks who aren't familiar with it, I can hit Control-Alt and click at other locations and do a similar thing. Now, I know you can do all of this with find and replace if you want to, but there are cases where it's just a little bit easier to use the multi-caret to make the edits that you did there. I went from 5.0.0 to 5.0.2, and it was a lot easier to change it there. Now, for folks who use keyboard, you wouldn't expect me to have a feature that didn't have a keyboard model, now would you? Shift-Alt-Dot, if you have something selected, will add a new multi-cursor at each matching instance. So all I did there was I selected the 5 and then hit Shift-Alt-Dot several times to create a handful of additional characters. And I can make that modification. And last but not least, I can Shift-Alt-Semicolon. Oh, wait, let me abort it because you won't see it that way. Shift-Alt-Semicolon will do a in-document, give me all the characters for all of those locations at one time. So it's a tool that's actually been around for a while, but because we've been tweaking it, we want to let people know about the feature if that's going to be useful to you and be able to get more feedback on how folks are using it and, make it better for folks. There were some comments in the comment section. One of the questions, the glyph bug about WPF in Visual Studio, that's specifically, if I'm not mistaken, dealing with hyphen-based ligatures. So, like if I do dash greater than, it doesn't transform that into a ligature correctly. It's actually a WPF limitation. We're trying to work with them. And as Visual Studio takes newer versions of .NET Framework and .NET Core, hopefully that is one that we'll be able to fix. It's just a problem right now. I could get into the history of what it is. It has to do with actually an HTML performance issue from a very long time ago, but that's one we definitely would like to see fixed. Somebody else also mentioned about Visual Studio Code and their behavior. When we originally designed the multi-caret experience, we weren't really experienced with screen readers. That was an area that we were still learning how to do the right things with, and that experience is not as good as we'd like it to be. Visual Studio Code came along and introduced their multi-caret experience, and they did a much better job engaging with the community and built a better experience there. We're working on bringing the screen reader experience for multi-caret editing over to Visual Studio. So if you know how to do multi-caret editing with your screen reader in VS Code, you should have a similar experience in both places. Go ahead.
Getting some box selection love. Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you're also getting some font love, both in terms of fonts that people are using.
I'm glad to hear people love it.
And also people who just want to go back to the default of VS 2019.
Yep. And we didn't want to remove any of those options. You've got the ability to go back to whatever font that you like. There are some other comments in the thread, but I don't want to spend too much time on those because I don't want to take away other folks' time here. One last one I do want to show off really quickly here. I'm going to do Control-Shift-F to bring up Find in Files, and I'm going to search for space. Now, most people would not search for space. You know what's going to happen here. I'm going to hit find all. My CPU is going to spike. It's going to be looking through my entire file, trying to give me something that I probably don't really want. Well, when I do find all here, after a moment, you're going to see a dialog that pops up. This is a safety net. If you do a search and we already find 10,000 or more results, we're going to stop that search and ask you, hey, you sure you want to do this? Our telemetry shows that most people do not want 10,000 matches. In fact, most people don't even want 1,000 matches, but we didn't want to pull that range back too far initially.
Yeah.
This is here to give you the opportunity to say, no, I don't want that search. Give me back my CPU, cancel that, and so on, and help preventing you from having your CPU go completely out of control. Now, you can say search all. You can even say remember. Always search all. You've got the ability, you've got the control there to do whatever you want, because there are people who legitimately want to find more than 10,000 results. But this is here that we found this has actually improved a lot of the performance hits and a lot of the non-responsiveness that people get when they kick off a find and discover that's not actually what they want. They didn't want to search over the whole solution or whatever. At the bottom, it will let you know that it was canceled and give you a message to let you know, and that will be read by the screen readers and everything to say, hey, you may want to refine that search, try again, because we're not sure you got what you really wanted. But things like this, we're really trying to comb the developer community. We're looking for feedback. We're looking at telemetry of the places where people are really getting unreasonable slowdowns and the things that are really dissatisfying folks, and that's what we're trying to address here.
That is really exciting. I didn't even really know box selection existed, which actually brings me to one customer feedback ask that I thought was interesting. Maybe it should be asked if you want them when you first start VS. It's by default off and hidden in the options, so people with reading disabilities have to know that it exists. So I'm assuming they're referring to like the spacing options, the font.
It's a great question. One of the things that I've been talking with Grace in particular about is a way to group together accessibility related options to make it a little bit easier. If folks who've been using Windows for a long time, which, yeah, one of those, the accessibility related features were scattered throughout Control Panel. Now there's the Ease of Access Center that brings them all together. We're looking into whether or not we can do something similar for tools options to help you find those features and just other ways to try to make it easier. I know Grace is on the forefront of that customization, helping you find out what you can do. I don't want to take too much of her time here, and I know a lot of those investigations are still in progress. I don't know how much she's planning on talking about today, but it's an area that we want to do. We want to help people find these features so that they can be more productive. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's an issue across the board with VS sometimes, where like back when I was working on debugger stuff, it's like there's so many cool tools that nobody knows about because they're hard to find and nobody knows they exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the punchline is always, is this new in Visual Studio? I'm like, no, this has been here for years.
Yeah, I mean, how many people here who are watching, is this the first time you've ever heard of multi-carat? And it's been around for half a decade almost. And
yeah. I
knew about it, but I couldn't remember. I'll admit I have a cheat sheet here to remind me what the keyboard shortcuts are, because it's not one I use frequently. But there are places. I used to come from the Emacs world where, you know, keyboard shortcuts and things like that were king. There are places where multi-carat comes in really handy. And this is one that I hope folks will use it.
Wow, this is really exciting stuff. So thank you so much for sharing all of that, Dante. It's really cool to have all those options. And you mentioned Grace. And speaking of options, there are more ways to personalize VS than ever, in addition to font and line spacing. So joining me now is Grace. He's going to talk to us about some really cool new additions to how you can personalize VS. Hey, Grace.
Hi, how's it going?
Doing great. Seeing a lot of cool new stuff, and I'm excited to see what you have to share, because I know what you have to share is awesome and is probably going to be the fan favorite in some ways.
Thanks. Yeah. So I've been working on improving the ways that people can personalize their Visual Studio so that they can code the way they want to. And what this means is whether you have specific reading preferences, coding preferences, or learning differences, cognitive differences, we want to make sure that Visual Studio is flexible enough to provide those options so that you can code the way you want. And so we've put together a suite of personalization features, and we're just getting started. So we're on this journey. But today I can share some of the features that we've been working on and some of the features that you all can try. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with sharing some features for personalizing your workspace and organization. So here we can see that my tabs are on top. I can go ahead and right-click on a tab. I can go to Set Tab Layout, Options, and I can color my document tabs by project. What this does is it gives me an extra level of organization, and so I can associate my tabs to colors, and it's especially useful for folks who like that extra kind of organization, or for folks who may have learning or cognitive differences and kind of need that extra level of organization because the letters don't quite jump out all at the same time. So I'm also going to bold text on selected tabs. That's going to let me find my file at a glance if I have a lot of stuff open. And then I'm also going to shrink my tab width. And this is going to let me see a lot more tabs on screen at once. And I'm going to shrink it smaller than you would normally use just to make a point. So here you are. I can see a lot more tabs on screen. And you can see that I can now select a tab and it'll show me the full color. And that's been really useful for a lot of folks. So right now it only colors by project, and you can see that you can also rearrange your tabs as well. I'm also going to right click here, set tab layout, and place tabs on the left. So now you can see a nice overview of your workspace, and all of the colors are organized by project. And this is especially nice also for people who are spatial thinkers and prefer laying out their workspace to get an overview before diving into any specific file.
I love this. This is promoting my personal habit of never closing my tabs, whether it's in VS or it's in a browser. I wish web browsers would adopt this too. Like I love the organization of it. I think that it makes things a lot faster to find instead of having to close out of a tab that you really want to keep open just to make things easier to navigate. So that's really cool.
Right. And it's the fact that you've got everything laid out and you know where it is. You can just go grab it, and you don't necessarily have to close everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we got other excited people. Definitely going to use that with you.
Cool. So the other interesting thing is you can sync your VS theme to your Windows theme, and you can schedule this theme to change with the sunset. And what this does is that your Visual Studio can change based on the amount of light you have. And for some folks, this can be very helpful because it syncs to your circadian rhythm and it follows how productive you are. So I'm going to go ahead and enable this, use system setting. And then I'm going to go ahead and change my, I'm going to go ahead and change my theme in my Windows. So right now it's light. I'm going to go ahead and change it to dark. And there you go.
Yeah.
So you can schedule this to change, and then Visual Studio will also reflect that.
That is really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I know for some people, they like to have the darker colors with the sunset instead of the blinding lights of light mode or blue mode when you're coding away at 12 o'clock at night. So that's exciting.
Exactly. And for some folks, it's kind of helping with their reading preferences and also helping with their kind of the different times of day can affect how productive they are. And so having this follow their kind of circadian rhythm can really help with that productivity piece.
Yeah, that's a great touch.
Yeah. Also, the other thing I wanted to share with you all is that Visual Studio now has custom themes. And
the one you've all been waiting for.
Yeah. So these custom themes have been converted from Visual Studio Code to work in Visual Studio. And we're just getting started. So this is just a handful of themes. And we've been experimenting with a converter tool, which will help you convert a VS Code theme to work in VS if you're a theme author.
Cool.
So
check out the link below if you want to convert a theme.
Yeah. So the link is below. You all can give it a try, and I'll share with you all how to do this. So if you go to Tools, Theme, you can see all these themes that you've got installed. You can also get more themes here. What that's going to do is direct you to the marketplace where we've got a selection of new themes. And what I'm going to do now is share with you how you can convert a theme if you're a theme author, or if you've got a theme that you've been playing around with in VS Code. So the theme converter tool will be at aka.ms/theme converter, and the link is posted. But what I've done is I've gone ahead and cloned the tool and also built the tool, and we'll be starting from there. So this is the theme that I'm going to be converting today. It's the Winter is Coming theme, and I'm going to apply it to my VS Code. So you can see that I've already done that. What I'm going to do now is select on my keyboard, I'm going to press Control-Shift-P, and then I'm going to select Generate Color Theme from Current Settings. So what that does is it gives me a list of tokens that I can use for my Visual Studio theme. And I'm going to select all the text, so Control-A, and then uncomment all of the tokens that are commented out, Control-K-U. That's going to give Visual Studio the full range of colors inside this theme, including the fallback colors.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I'm also going to save this JSON file, and I've created a folder called My Theme where I'm going to save this JSON file. So I'm going to name it Winter is Coming. I'm going to make sure it's a JSON file, not a JSON-C file. There's a selection of file types you can use, but JSON is the one that's going to work here. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go over to my command line in admin mode. So I've already built the tool, cloned it, and I've navigated to the folder where I can go ahead and run the tool with the flag -H. So this flag will give me instructions on how to use this tool. I'm going to go ahead and convert my theme. So I'm going to, whoops. So this command will help me convert my theme. And so the flag -I is the folder that I've just saved my JSON file in, and it tells the tool what to convert. And then -T gives me the target Visual Studio. So I can patch it to any Visual Studio. It's optional. You don't have to view your theme, but I want to show you all what that theme looks like once it's been converted. And so what this tool does is it takes all the tokens inside that Visual Studio Code theme and applies it to Visual Studio in the corresponding ways. And so you'll see after we get to apply the theme that you can view the editor, you can see the Solution Explorer colors, everything will be applied as the VS Code theme does it. So,
oh, I do have a question from chat, by the way, regarding the theme converter. So
yeah,
is the theme converter a GitHub project, and is it open source?
Yeah, it's a GitHub project and it's open source. So you all are welcome to clone it, play with it. You all are welcome to make improvements and make PRs if you all like. And of course, if you all find issues with it, this is just the beginning stages. So if you all find tokens that aren't mapped or things like that, feel free to share with us and we can see how we might be able to address that.
Good stuff.
So I'm going to go ahead and go over to Tools and Theme. And you can see my new theme is Winter's Coming. I'm going to select that. And what it's going to do is, this is a patched version of VS. It's going to apply to my specific instance of VS so that I can view it.
Hey, I love it.
Here we
This is
are.
the theme I'm currently using, so.
Sweet.
This is so cool. Like, I just think of how much time I spend in the marketplace finding cool themes for when I'm using VS Code. And now I get to do the same thing for Visual Studio. So I get to waste more time looking at pretty colors and cool themes in the marketplace, which is exciting.
Yeah, it could be a lot of fun. It could be definitely fun. And for some folks, you know, it's really important because this gives you the flexibility in order to get the colors that you may read best with or code best with. And it lets you reflect, you know, your tastes and make Visual Studio environment the way you want it.
Good stuff. I love having all these different options. And yeah, just options in general. And people are digging it. One person likes the vertical tabs that you mentioned earlier. Preferably on a bigger screen. I agree with that. I find that I use it when I have my computer hooked up to a monitor because my laptop is a little bit small. But yeah. And then I think there was also just somebody said in the chat earlier that they were installing VS right now because of the themes. So that's really cool to see. And
that's
also,
really nice to hear.
Yeah. And does the theme converter work for more niche scenarios like glow effects on fonts?
Right now, it doesn't work for glow effects on the fonts, but it could be a possibility in the future.
Awesome.
It's been scoped to convert colors only right now.
Cool. Baby steps, but really good baby steps in my opinion. I think this is really exciting.
Yeah, I know there are a selection of VS Code themes that do have some cool font, glow effects and things like that. So that could be something that we could look into in the future.
I like it. And yeah, if people want to go check out the VS themes, go to the link below or just start browsing in the marketplace. So this is really exciting.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear feedback from you all. Feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to share your comments and your feedback.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Grace. This is really exciting stuff and is a really cool incentive to hit that download button for VS 2022.
Exactly. Please download VS 2022 if you haven't already.
All right. Well, thank you, Grace.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yep. So now we're going to pivot a little bit from personalization to performance, and specifically performance in the C++ world. So joining me right now is David. Hey, David.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. I'm very excited to talk about some of the C++ productivity and performance improvements that we've been making in the latest version of the preview. And just since I was here last time, I demoed Hot Reload, and great news. As of Preview 4, Hot Reload is now supported for CMake and open folder projects. And on a side note, VS is now supporting CMake 3.21 natively. So it's great news because we got a lot of feedback last time about Hot Reload not working on CMake projects. So there you are. Go and try it out. And you know, on top of that, we also have another Hot Reload feature that is Hot Reload on Save. So when you press Hot Reload, right next to the drop-down, there's a new option called Hot Reload on Save. So it's just one less click for all of you, especially game developers, to reload your game, to not having to click through so many menu items just to get to that exact point of your game. So that's great. And I like to thank everyone who participated in the last Hot Reload for C++ survey. The team learned a lot about how you all use Hot Reload, especially the limitations of game developer workflows. And of course, we will improve the Hot Reload experience based on your helpful, very, very helpful feedback. So thank you once again.
That is really exciting. And it's nice to see Hot Reload getting applied to even more scenarios than it already was, between, I think, Blazor, CSS, that came out for Preview 4 as well, and now CMake, and just having Hot Reload on Save is awesome and such a time saver. And
Yeah,
time, perf, right? You also have some updates?
Of course. I think everyone cares about perf. Working with large code bases, it's something that game developers are just. We hear a lot of feedback in the past about improvements we can make for Visual Studio, and I'm here to give you just this little sneak preview of the performance in Visual Studio 2022. Main theme is VS 2022 now feels faster just getting to code. And so the team did a little bit of benchmark measurements based on Unreal Engine 4.27, which is the latest version of UE that is compatible with VS 2022. And we did some timings and averaged them over 3 runs, and also measured it in Visual Studio 2019, 16.11.2, and also preview the 2022 preview 1.1. So let me show you some of the numbers. Okay, so as you can see here, there is quite a lot of improvements. Even though the numbers are small, you can see from VS 2019 all the way to the pre-release build, the numbers are slowly decreasing, which is great for productivity. For example, if you see the third one that says low solution and index code, that we measure that by loading a solution after the code has been indexed, and it decreased by almost a second. But something that is more impressive is the IntelliSense ready time. So after the IntelliSense code has been indexed and you open it, you open the file, after the IntelliSense IPCH has been generated, we dropped all the way from 5 seconds to 2.84 seconds. And we're not stopping here. This is just a sneak preview of the different performance improvements that we're making.
That is so cool. I think I most definitely noticed the perf improvements when I open VS. I think that's where I see it the most. And when I open a solution, those are like the two that feel like game changers for me personally. So,
yeah. So, DM me on Twitter or talk to me. Tell me what you think about the performance improvements. It is very important to us because we know how important productivity is to C++ developers, and especially game developers. And I have a question for all of you. Do you have performance or reliability bugs that are like slowing down? Because I'm interested in finding out more. I'm interested in working with the team to fix those bugs, and they're just hindering your everyday workflow. So for that, please fill out yet another survey. I love surveys at aka.ms/perf and rel sign up survey. You'll let us know what your experience is in VS 2019 and the differences in VS 2022. And of course, share us your performance bugs. Now, lastly, I just want everyone to try VS 2022. For C++ developers, we're making this as frictionless and painless as possible. Install it and let us know, because you can install VS 2022 side by side with 2019, especially the new V143 toolset is binary compatible with previous toolsets. So because of that, we're making our older versions of our compiler and making them available in VS 2022. So go for it. Let me know how it goes.
good stuff. It's always great to see perf updates like all the time. That's never a bad thing to have. So yeah, thank you so much, David, for sharing all that. I think that's really exciting to see. And yeah, I hope people notice the difference. And if not, I hope they can share their feedback.
You're welcome, Leslie.
All righty. So last but certainly not least, we haven't talked about debugging in a while, and luckily Harshada is here to tell us all the really cool new tools that have been added to the debugging space lately, because everyone struggles with debugging, and having tools that can ease some of that headache is always exciting. So, hey, Harshada. Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're still muted. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no problem. Hey, hi. Thanks for having me, Leslie. So as you said, yep, we do have lots of new features in Preview 3 and Preview 4 from debugging, especially around the breakpoints tabs, and I'm super excited to show all of them. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. So the very first thing I have is a temp breakpoint, which is a brand new type of a breakpoint, which can help you set the breakpoint when you don't want your breakpoint to hit every single time. So, there are some scenarios where you're just working with your code, you fixed your code, and you wanted to evaluate one last time, and you don't have a breakpoint to hit every single time. Or you're just working with loops, like for loops, and you just want to evaluate the first iteration of your loop. What I normally do is I set my breakpoint, debug through it, and go back and delete or disable it. But now I don't have to do that with a new breakpoint called a temporary breakpoint. So I'm going to set a breakpoint here on line 33. And if you notice this gray glyph here, which can lead me set my breakpoint, that's something new we added too.
I love that. I didn't even realize it was a thing until I opened it.
That before.
Yeah. So for people who are new to debugging, know that exists.
That's actually very handy. So I have a breakpoint here. I'm going to go to the settings window and check this remove breakpoint once hit checkbox. And you have noticed this breakpoint has been a new icon now, and it will be a temporary breakpoint now. So like when you continue your debugging now, as soon as you hit this breakpoint once, it will get automatically removed. So this is super handy when you don't want your breakpoint to hit every time and you don't have to go back, delete, and disable it. You can also use a shortcut to set this breakpoint. That's F9 Shift Alt, T. And another cool way to set this breakpoint is this new context menu on this right click. So with this context menu, you can actually set the temporary breakpoint with just one click. And you can also set this advanced breakpoints, such as trace points and conditional breakpoint, with couple clicks, because you have to give the settings for the actions and conditions. But I really like this context menu because it's super handy when you want to quickly set some advanced breakpoints.
I love it. I especially love temporary breakpoints because I have a bad habit of forgetting to delete breakpoints. I no longer use.
That's what I like this about, is because I do that now many times, and I have to go back and then disable or delete my breakpoint. So it's really handy for me too. So the next thing I have is, I don't know if you have noticed, with Preview 3, you can actually just drag your breakpoint from one location and go back, or just place wherever you want. And this is, again, very handy, because if you want to repurpose your breakpoints, this is really cool, because you don't have to do this whole breakpoint thing again. And this also works, with the advanced breakpoints, such as trace points and conditional breakpoints, as long as the action and conditions variable are within the context. So you don't have to do the whole settings again. And I think that's, again, very useful, because you can quickly just repurpose your advanced breakpoints as well. And finally, within the breakpoints, I have, with the Preview 4, we launched our most popular request and the most popular type of breakpoint, that's dependent breakpoint. And as the name suggests, this is a breakpoint which can let you set a breakpoint depending on whether another breakpoint is hit or not. So this can be helpful in many scenarios. So let's see how it works. So for example, I have a breakpoint on line 31, and I also have a breakpoint on line 57. I want my breakpoint on line 57 to only hit when the breakpoint on line 31 is hit. So I know my basket is created, I have a view model created, and I can successfully add the items to it. So now what I can do is I can go to this breakpoint and right click, and use this new checkbox which says only enable when the following breakpoint is hit. And this will give me a drop-down box with all the breakpoints available in my application code. So I'm going to be selecting breakpoint 31 because that's what I want my breakpoint to be dependent on. So as you can see, this breakpoint is now a dependent breakpoint in a disabled state, because unless and until the prerequisite breakpoint is set, the dependent breakpoint will remain disabled. And it will remain dependent as long as you have this checkbox checked. So let's again continue our debugging and see how it works. So as soon as the breakpoint on line 31 is hit, the breakpoint on line 57 gets enabled, and that will be the next thing, or depending on the loop, how it will hit again. So I think this will be helpful in many scenarios, but specifically, I think it will be helpful if you want to create the common paths in your application code, like from one breakpoint to another. And if you're working with game loops and the utility APIs, this will be really very handy.
I love this. I've seen this ask sit in the backlog for a while, and seeing it garner more and more votes on the the place where you give feedback that I can't remember the name of, the developer community.
The dev community, yeah. And we launched it in preview 4, and we already have a very good feedback around that. And we hope everyone uses that and give us more feedback about it.
Yeah.
So the last, yeah, of course.
Build trees of dependent breakpoints.
Yep. The last thing I have is this new external sources node in the Solution Explorer. So this will be a really cool feature if you're working with the projects which has dependent libraries such as NuGet libraries and .NET libraries. So you can actually browse through the code of those external modules and understand how it works. So this normally collapsed by default, and it only appears when you're debugging. If I'm expanded, it will show me the decompiled source for all the modules which has the symbols loaded and also has a source of information associated with it. So as I mentioned, you will need to have its symbols. So the availability of these modules will depend on how you have your symbol settings. So that can be here. So how you have your symbol settings and also the That's My Code settings. But in case you don't see the module you're interested in, you can use this new modules without sources subnode. This will actually give you the list of all the external sources applicable to your code. And you can selectively load the symbols of the module you're interested. So you can just right click and say load symbols, and it will bring the module in the external sources node. And you now can browse through all the source files, and it may also ask you if you want to download the source from the internet if it hasn't done it already. I normally do this, don't ask again, so I don't see the pop-up every time. So once I do that, and once we have the source code, you can actually just browse through the source code, search through it, don't ask me again, and then even place the breakpoint and debug through it. So I think this will be really handy to understand how you can use the external libraries and just use it in a better way.
Yeah,
again, this is actually a very first step to give the best decompilation experience with Visual Studio. So we are still making a lot of changes around this feature, and we will definitely like to hear your feedback on that.
That's really cool. This feels like an extension of SourceLink, but a bit more discoverable. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so we do have the SourceLink extension, which Chuck wrote it from the debugger team, and it's kind of an extension to that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Shout out, Chuck.
yeah, here's Chuck. So that's all I had, but do give it a try to all our features and let us know what you think about that. And if you find any issues, let us know that too.
Great. Oh, I did see one ask in chat. Any plans in the future for an undo for removed breakpoints during runtime?
We don't have, but you can definitely file in suggestion tickets, and we'll see the community input on that. Or I can file a suggestion ticket for you, and you can vote on that.
Yeah, do share your feedback. Seriously, like dependent breakpoints, that would not have happened had y'all not voted. Like, please do. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that. It's really exciting. When I opened up Preview 4 for the first time and just saw all these new debugging features that I knew had been sitting in DevCon for a while, I was so happy. I was really excited. So yeah, this is really exciting. So thanks a lot, Harshada.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So that concludes our What's New in Visual Studio 2022 previews 3 and 4. What a mouthful. But there were so many cool features that we explored today, from editor improvements and font to UX refresh in general, to custom tabs, vertical tabs, if you weren't already familiar with that, box spacing, so much more, debugging, temporary breakpoints, and a partridge in a pear tree. So if you want to learn more about VS 2022, be sure to go ahead and try it out. Once again, the link is visualstudio.microsoft.com. You can also head over to the Visual Studio blog, where you can check out a bunch of really recent blogs on all the new features that have arrived for Preview 4 and are coming soon. And yeah, definitely stay tuned, because GA of VS 2022 is closer than you may think. So until next time, happy coding.